why do I feel like a candle needs to be on the coffee table? Why can't a little basket of toys be on the coffee table? Does this season of motherhood need from me? And then how can my home almost like just surround me with serving what our house needs to be.
This is NICU Babies Parent Support with Kathryn Whitaker, a podcast from Hand to Hold, a national nonprofit that provides free personalized support, resources, and community before, during, and after a NICU stay. My conversations here focus on education and personal stories with medical and hospital professionals, counselors, therapists, and NICU moms and dads from across the country. So whether you're preparing for a NICU stay, you're currently there, or you're months and years past your stay, you belong here. The NICU is hard. We're here to help. I'm your host, Kathryn Whitaker, the mom of 6 children, including my very own NICU baby, and I'm so grateful that you're here. Hey, y'all. It's a new season. I hope you're just as excited as I am. I know last week I told you all about it. Today, we're going to get into it. So let's start first with this idea of tending the heart, the body, and the home. So we're going to focus on home first today. My guest today is Kate Strickler from the Naptime Kitchen, but I wanted to focus on something practical first. So in other words, what's something that you can do today to help manage the chaos? I know that at least when we were in the NICU and really, golly, even all the hospital stays that we had later and the surgeries and all that, our life felt unimaginably chaotic. And this is coming from someone who was type A. My house looked a certain way. We had systems in place, like we were getting it done. And then I had this NICU baby. And our house didn't just go from being chaotic in general, but it started to look like my inner heart felt. And that was an absolute disaster. And I wanted to give you a person and resources that might help you tackle just one place, just one area of your home that you could control, that you could find peace with, so that you could take a deep breath and get some rest, and that you could get up the next day and fought the chaotic battle once again. I knew that you needed a dose of, okay, you can do this hard thing. And I'm telling you right now, when you are in a season of absolute, utter chaos, 2 things. You don't have to deal with all the chaos at once. And 2, if someone offers you help, take it. Like 100% your answer is always yes. Kate and I will talk about this in this particular interview, but I want you to remember that you do not have to do all this alone, and that you do not have to do all this at the same time, that you can definitely take a few moments and be like, okay, what's the thing that is mission critical right now? And then move to the next thing. And then you are eventually going to find your new normal, your new pace, and how you can say, okay, now I have the bandwidth for this, and we're going to tackle the pantry, or I'm going to call the insurance company, or whatever it is that you need to do to find your peace, you can do it. So today we're focusing on how can you tend your home so that you can tend your family. And notice that I didn't say how can you tend your home perfectly, but how can you tend your home practically, what works for you. My guest today is Kate Strickler, and we're going to be talking a little bit about how to tend the home, but also how can you help nurture people with meals. So she's got so many great resources, and I can't wait to share them all with you. She also has some stellar advice. So don't go anywhere, because this is what we're chatting about. So my guest today is Kate Strickler. She's a mom of 4 based in Charleston, South Carolina. She's known for her blog and Instagram, Naptime Kitchen, where she shares cooking tips and life management advice. She's also the creator of the very popular Home Reset audio course, From Home to the Kitchen to Parenting. Kate loves practicality and systems with a hefty dose of perspective and grace. My perfect guest for today. So with that, let's chat. Well, I'm excited to have one of my favorite people on the podcast today. Kate Strickler is an amazing human on the internet. She provides such great resources. Kate, I'm super happy that you're here.
Thank you, Kathryn. I'm happy to be here. I'm excited to be here.
Well, you have this great presence, I think, of reminding people to live in their current mess, their current season, and to be joyful in that, whatever that might look like. And I think that's refreshing, because you don't try to put on like, hey, my life is perfect and yours should also be perfect. Like, I think you meet people where they are. And so today, as we sort of launch this brand new season, it's really fun, because I know that There are lots of things that NICU parents find themselves, like, feeling very out of control with, and some things that you offer, at least your presence on social media allows people to be like, "Okay, I can do this one thing today." Like, I
Mhm.
love Pasta Monday, we'll talk about that, but, like, just making sure that people say, "Okay, what can I do today?" So I'm curious, Naptime Kitchen is your handle on social media, like, how did that come about? You're a mom of 4 great kids, but how did Naptime Kitchen how was that born?
It was really born out of a season when my child, who's now 8, so my firstborn, who's now 8, when he was, like, 6 months old, I really just found myself trapped at home really often, like, he was napping, and I was honestly just a little bored, and so I would I was cooking a lot more, and I kind of just felt this pull of, like, I think instead of, like, having these, like, food heavy pictures on my normal Instagram, I'm just gonna, like, start a second account. There was no thought in my mind that it would ever grow. It mostly was just like, "Oh, I'll just put the food pictures on a separate account." This was back when, like, you would write a lot on Instagram. There was no reels, there was no Instagram stories. It was like a photo that you would put a filter on, and that was it. And so that's what I was doing for Naptime Kitchen. And I just had a lot more time, and so I could devote, like, while he was napping, I would be, like, prepping stuff for dinner and kind of thinking through more creative and fun recipes. And the tagline really became, "While the babies sleep, I cook," because that's what I would do. Like, I learned pretty quickly that you can't really cook dinner during the witching hour. And so I would be, like, prepping so much of dinner at, like, 2 to 4 in the afternoon, and then having it kind of ready to heat or reheat or whatever during the witching hour. So that's how it started.
Sometimes the best things do happen organically, and I think
Yeah.
that's certainly been the case with you. I mean, you talk a little bit, actually, you talk a lot about the relationship with your own mom and how she sort of laid the foundation and you just kind of become an extension of that. I'm curious, Kate, like what is something like her best lesson that she's given you as her
Mhm.
mom? And like how does that shape, I think, your own motherhood? I'm curious.
I think the biggest thing I've come to realize about my mom is she was the same as my mom as she was in the rest of her life. I feel like she didn't switch of, like, I'll be patient with you guys, but I'm not patient with other people. Or she just was who she was throughout everything that she did, which to me, I think takes a little bit of the pressure off of motherhood, because it makes me less fearful of, like, oh my gosh, what can I think of that I'm going to shape my children so much? What is this one thing I can do? Versus, like, if I can focus on just the type of person that I want to be, and that's what they're going to see. That's what I think. My mom was just very consistent in who she was, whether I was around, whether I saw her talking to other people, and that really shaped a lot of how I think about motherhood, because it really felt a lot it felt a lot of, like, more it's funny because I think in motherhood you're tempted to be like, focus on your children, focus on your children. And not that there's anything wrong with that, but I think sometimes if you can actually focus a little bit on yourself, like, what kind of person am I trying to be? That's who your children are just going to naturally see. And so that's kind of what I saw from her, was just this type of person that I wanted to emulate in a lot of ways, versus her trying to teach me how to emulate those things.
I really love that. I think this ability, I think as moms, I think sometimes you're right. We always try to shift the focus, or women in general try to shift the focus to what can I be doing for other people? What fire do I need literally, what fire do I need to put out right now? What butt do I need to wipe?
Mhm.
And then this internal focus of if I can focus on me and what is important to me, then my kids start to see that. And then it becomes this seamless, like, living as opposed to this is who I am on this day and this is who I am in this hour. And instead, it's just who you are. Man, I love that. See, this is why I ask you these questions, Kate. They're so good.
I liked that question. I, like, really thought about it. I was like, that's what I came back to. I mean, so much of what Naptime Kitchen is, we joke that my mom should be, like, receiving 50% of every stolen so much of the meat of what I do from her. But at the end of the day, I think that's what I come back to, is just what I who I think about her as a mom is who I also think about her as just a person of how
Yeah.
she acts and how she is. So
Well, I think we all wanna be your mom when we grow up. I think we can all I think that we can all agree on that. I mean, you share a ton of, I think, hacks, and maybe you learn them from her. Sometimes, necessity is the creator of our inventiveness is that we have 4 kids and we're like, "We gotta find a way to make this better," and the next thing you know, we look up and we're like, "Why isn't everyone doing that? I thought
mhm.
this is how we all solve that problem." So you definitely share some stuff like that. But I'm curious, Kate, like what's one myth that you think people think about or have when it comes to managing a chaotic house? Because I know women that are listening, moms and dads that are listening, are in some sort of chaos right now. Maybe they're currently in
Mhm.
the NICU or they're a little bit past it, or maybe they're years past it. But sometimes life can feel extra chaotic. What do you think a myth is that people think like, oh, if my house is chaos, this is the thing that has to happen?
Yeah. What I thought about when you asked that question was I think that the myth can be that there is like a one size solution that is going to fix it, but there is so much nuance in terms of like how we live our lives and how much chaos. I mean, there's financial, like some people can hire someone to come and clean some of the chaos. Other people cannot. Some people have 2 children, some people have 4, some people have a child that's in the NICU, some people have healthy children. There's much at play that I think when you're in it, you're so desperate to be like, somebody, I'm going to see what this person's doing and that will work for me. But there's so many layers beneath that. There's so much you don't see kind of behind the camera. And so I think being really, really gentle with yourself and kind of being like, what resources do I have at hand? Like what is staring me in the face as being the most chaotic piece that I could solve? And then how do I want to try and solve that? But I think the myth is that everybody's got it figured out, everybody's doing it, and you just somehow can't get it together. But you might have a million things different than that other person whose video you're watching online of their morning. It's funny, I shared our like morning routine a month ago, and one thing that I was very taken aback by was my children don't start school until after 8. And I would say over 50% of my audience, their children are at school, like in their seats by 7:15. And I was like, wow, you couldn't possibly do the same things in the morning that I do in the morning. I and my children wake up early. So I'm like, we have 2 hours in the morning. Whereas I'm like, some of you are like shaking your child out of bed at 6:45, just trying to get them in the car with a Pop-Tart by 7. So it's so it's so difficult to compare those 2 morning situations. They are not the same. And just realizing like, man, people's that's 1 hour of the day. That's one slot, many things on top of that pile and make your day just different than somebody else's. And so I think the myth is that there's this one solution that's going to solve it for you.
And if the one solution doesn't work for us, then we're clearly failing at motherhood. That's the other lie that
Yeah.
we tell
Oh yeah.
ourselves, right?
Yes.
That if we can't get it together like this person that we don't yet know on the internet has their life together, then why can we in our own life, in our own homes, not get it together? I mean,
Yeah.
we put unrealistic expectations in ourselves, and I think this advent of social media maybe whips the frenzy up a little bit more than maybe what's necessary. But I think it's good. I mean, and I think you do a great job of this, Kate. And I think it's worth saying that it's important to connect with real people in your life. For the NICU moms listening, who are the other NICU moms? Who are the neighbors that you have? Who are the friends that you have in your community? What your circles of influence are, and how are those people helping you? I think sometimes when someone else walks in your home and sees what you're doing, they're like, "Oh, I never thought about doing it that way." And then it's easier for them to say, "Oh, okay, that might work for her, but I also know her life, so I'm gonna tweak that a little bit and make it work for me." And magically, it works because we've seen, like, the real life application. So, thank
Yes.
you for reminding us that real life application matters. So you have a course that kind of saved my life. I've told you this before. And I think this ability, I think, Kate, most of us have things in our lives that are very out of control, chaotic. And then we have some things in our life that we're like, this I can control. Like I can control when I brush my teeth. I can control what I cook for my kids. I can control when I drive to run an errand. But I think this natural habitat that we find ourselves in, our homes, I found myself hyper fixated on, well, if I can't control my kids' medical needs, at least I can control what the pantry looks like.
Yep.
So I think I want you to speak into, Kate, this overarching ability. I think, how is it that we can see our homes as a tool as opposed to this burden that we have to
Mhm.
manage or that we have to fix?
Yeah. I think this really started to come to life for me after I had children, because before you have children, you really can make your home into a specific thing. Now, I think that life seasons change that, and I'll talk to that in a second. But I think I realized really quickly after I had children that there were certain things that I was trying to force our home to do and not realizing, like, I have 2 toddlers, and so a candle on the coffee table is just not going to work in this season, and it started to open up, like, why do I feel like a candle needs to be on the coffee table? Why can't a little basket of toys be on the coffee table? Does this season of motherhood need from me? And then how can my home almost like just surround me with serving what our house needs to be, constantly cleaning up the toys, constantly moving things out of their reach, constantly telling them not to touch things. And that's kind of where this idea came about of just like, why am I working so hard to try and make this home that I use every single day, all day long, look like a life that I'm not actually living? Versus, why is my home not reflecting the life that I actually live and have? And, whether it's with young children or wanting to invite a bunch of people into your house, like whatever it is that the season that you're in, and maybe you're now like I feel like my mom's an example of this, where we're all out of the house, but now she's in the grandparent stage. And so she has photo or little pictures that the kids have done in like kindergarten taped all over the wall. And she has plastic spoons and plates again and a high chair out at all times. Just she's like, well, if I'm going to have my grandkids over, I'm going to have a high chair out. It's like that's the phase of life I'm in right now. So I think just allowing your home to reflect that you're in and what you need out is so helpful. And I think it just releases us from these expectations of whether you've gotten them from a magazine or social media or whatever, of what your home is supposed to look like. Again, maybe it's someone that's in a completely different season of life.
Yeah, I mean, I've never walked into any of my friends' houses and thought, "Your house looks amazing today. You should get it photographed." Like, we all live in our, not that my friends' houses are,
Mhm.
complete disasters, but they're lived in, right? Like, there are toys on the floor. There are Cheerios that need to be swept up. There are many cases, like when our younger one was in the NICU, like we had medical equipment everywhere. And I'm like,
Yeah.
welcome to our life. Like, this is where we're living, and you can either try to hide it or you can learn to make peace with it. And
Mhm.
I think this idea, I love how you said this, surrounding your home so that it can serve you. So I want you to share a little bit about the home reset course specifically, because I know that there are pieces and components of that, Kate, that while I think it looks different for everyone and how they implement it and what they do, I think it's the mindset really that I'm curious about. Like, what encouraged you to put it together, and why did you put it together the way that you did? I mean, there's a billion courses out there, like Marie Kondo, whatever. She has a lot of joy in her house. I don't know, but mine's full of a lot of messes. But I'm curious why you took the approach that you did, and what brought it about.
As blog posts, because I was just sharing with people, this is kind of how I declutter our home once or twice a year. And just started to realize that there was a need for what I call just like normal organization, just like organization that doesn't require perfectly curated clear bins or color coordinated items, that you could just organize your home. And I really started to believe, if somebody asks you, where's a battery? Like, I need batteries, and you know where the batteries are. You can say they're in the second drawer. Or if you're looking for something and you know where it is to find it, you're organized. Like that
I
is a
like that.
great level of organization. You don't have to have this like perfectly labeled clear acrylic battery container. You can, but I think just realizing that hyper level of organization was actually really, really crippling. It was crippling to me, and it was crippling to a lot of my friends. The feeling like, well, if I can't do this to perfection, then what is the point?
Right.
Or thinking I'm disorganized because my home doesn't look like that, which I just think is silly. I think you can have a home that is like organized and suits your family without that intense level of organization. And then when I was creating the course, I had 3 children, 3 and under, and I really wanted it to be audio. I was like, I cannot do a video. I don't ever wanna watch someone on video when I could listen to it in a like a podcast form, and I wanted it to have some sort of paper component that you could follow to check things off. So if you listen to the audio, you could come back to a place that everything I had said in the audio and what to do was tangible. And so that's how I came up with the system of like, it's a podcast, but then it has printable checklists to keep you on task. And I also knew that you might start something and then get interrupted by like a poopy diaper and need to stop. And so the checklist would allow you to come back and just remember like where you were, what was left to be done. Hand it to your husband and say, hey, can you do these checks off of the list? So just the audio component with the checklist to really motivate you in the audio and then keep you on task through the checklists.
I mean, I think it's well, I think it's brilliant, but I'm a big fan. But I think too, Kate, it gave me permission to like put things in places when you were talking about you're organized if you know where it is. I know that there are a lot of people that are rejoicing when you said that. But I think it gave me permission to put things that were in places that were actually useful instead of the places that Better Homes and Gardens said I should put them, right? Like in
Mhm.
our kitchens, we believe that like and even in our refrigerators, like things should be certain places. And I'm like, yeah, but like we moved, we had a bunch of medications for our son. And so we took all those medications and put them in a place in our pantry up high so they were safe, but in a place that we accessed every day instead of like in
Mhm.
the back of a cabinet. And I don't know why I needed your permission to do that, but thank you for giving me the permission. I think this reminder that our house is our house, right? It's not some magazine's house. It's not the neighbors down the street. Like it's our house. So make it work for you. And I think this reminder that I love the audio course. You can kind of tap into it when it makes sense, or even dive a little bit deeper when you want. And I think that's a really great aspect of it. I mean, I think there might be some people wondering. I know this isn't necessarily part of the home reset course, Kate, but I think it's a question that a lot of us wonder is there are some things that are easy to get rid of, right? Like, oh, if that thing is broken, that we don't use that thing anymore and everyone's lost the love for it, that's easy. But sometimes we get into sentimental stuff or things that people have given us that while we don't use them, we're like, but what what do we do with that? And I know that there were some moments of like our NICU stay that I felt like some of these things I needed to hold on to, they were just sitting in a box. So they were occupying space, but I'm like, what do I do with those? So maybe
Mhm.
give some people some advice or maybe some perspective on how do you handle the stuff that you know you should maybe get rid of, but you just don't know how.
I think that times it really helps me if I can see those items at once. And so for instance, like I feel like baby clothes can be one where you're like, oh, when they wore this and when they wore this. So let's say that you do that and you just have a place that you put them. They go into like a little bin. And then when that bin starts to fill up all at once, you can see all of those things and be like, okay, I am gaining the same feeling, this like sentimental feeling from 25 outfits. So what about if I just chose my 2 favorites because I'm going to receive that same memory and sentimental feeling, but I probably don't need to same what maybe with like stuffed animals. Like if your child had like loveys, if there's just one that you're like, "Oh, they just loved it." And then you're like, "I actually don't need 6 loveys to remember that they loved them." Like I could just keep one. But I think sometimes you have to like see it all together. That's how I feel about my children's artwork. When they bring things home, I'm like, "Oh, that one's so good and that one's so good." And I'll like stick them in a bin. And then like at the end of the year, I'll go through and I'll be like, "Oh, you know what? I'll just keep these 2. Like these 2 are great. I actually don't need 18 of their watercolor paintings. These 2 are great." So I think sometimes when you can see something at once, it allows you to whittle it down. And so and I we do like we have like outfits and things like that. So I don't want anyone to feel like you can't hold on to those sentimental things. But if those sentimental things are causing you stress, if you're feeling cluttered by that sentimentality, I would probably like kind of ask yourself, what's best here? Like,
Yeah.
is this helping you or is this actually just really, really bothering you? And is there some sort of, if you, whether it's like a photo album on your phone where you've taken pictures of things or just allowing yourself being like, I'm going to buy this one bin and that's going to be the keepsake bin for this child. And once it's full, it's full. And so I'm going to have to be able to let go of things or whatever.
Well, I'm glad that you mentioned about the artwork because I think sometimes we think in order to either be organized or to be, you know, detached from things that we must deal with them right then. And I think this idea that maybe it's okay sometimes to hold on to things that you love for a period of time and like
Mhm.
allow yourself to find and discover, okay, now I am at peace with letting things go. Like there's no harm, I don't think, in saying like this particular bin of clothes, like we had these adorable preemie NICU clothes that were given to us, which are teeny tiny. It would never fit any of my babies, but they were hard to let go of. So I held on to them for years and years, Kate. And finally, after holding on to them, I kept one
Mhm.
and then I donated the rest to the NICU where our son was at the NICU. But I needed that time to hold on to them, like to make peace with the memory because some of that was sweet, but some of it was also
Mhm.
traumatic. Make peace with that. And then I took a deep breath and I was like, and now I'm okay to let it go. So I think this idea that it's okay to hold on to some things or put things in a bin and then like you said, look at it all and be like, I'm going to take all this in and then we're going to figure out what we hold on to and what we give away. That's
Yeah.
really good. That's good advice. Thank you for
Yeah,
that.
I personally need time. Like with our kids' clothes, when they're every day somebody has something that doesn't fit anymore. Just people. So we have one bin in one closet where anything that doesn't fit anyone gets thrown into that bin. And then at the season change, I get that bin and I'm like, what needs to be donated? What can be handed down to the next child? I can make like all of those minute decisions that can really kind of cloud your brain. I can just make them all at once in one sitting. And that is really helpful.
This podcast is produced by Hand to Hold, a national nonprofit, but we're more than simply a podcast. Be sure to download our app in the Apple Store or on Google Play, or you can visit our website to discover all the ways that we can support you as a NICU parent at handtohold.org. You can join one of our support groups, sign up for counseling, find loss and bereavement support, request a peer mentor, or check out our educational resources and family stories. And all of that is at no cost to you. Okay, so I'm wanting to know, where were you like 6 kids ago, Kate? Because I really could have used you back then. I know you were putting pictures of food on the internet, but man, I needed you back then. I'm so glad that I have you now, though. I know that there may be a mom, Kate, who feels like overwhelmed by the chaos and doesn't know where to start. Like maybe she's in the NICU right now, or maybe she's just been discharged and it all feels like too much. Like she knows she needs to do something, but she looks around at all the piles and all the bins and says, I can't, I don't even know where to start.
Mhm.
What would you suggest to her? Like, what's one thing that she could do to maybe feel like it's not this huge mountain that she must conquer, but here's one thing that you can do that might make
Yeah.
things a little bit less chaotic.
I think the first thing that I personally like to do is just open a bag and put it somewhere and say, like, this is the donation bag. We always have donation bag in our house. It lives like in a closet. And anything that anybody has at any given moment that is no longer for us goes into that bag. And then when the bag is full, it like goes to the donation center and we open up another bag. I think something about whether you are like, I'm going to open up this one drawer or this one cabinet and just in that moment conquer it and be like, if it's like medicine, you're probably tossing it, what it depends on what it is, but allowing yourself one little space and saying like things that are not for me, we're going to get out. That is always the most helpful to me personally, is just having one spot where I know that these items live. Because if you have like in little piles all over your house, I think that in itself is overwhelming. So just having one place where all of those things go, that's kind of always my first step, no matter. no matter what room I start in, is like, I don't want to organize this until I've gone through it.
Yeah.
Like what needs to leave this? I don't want to organize things that we don't even need.
Right.
And so, sometimes it's seasonal, sometimes you need this right now. I think that is huge when you're having kids and you're like, we don't need these bibs now, but we might need them again. We might, have another child. So like having places where things that you don't need now are not taking up space for things that you do need now.
Oh, that's good
That makes
advice.
sense.
Yeah. No, it does make sense because I think sometimes, like, I know that after we had our NICU baby, I wasn't sure if we were going to have another baby. And I was like, do we hold on to this? Do we not? And finally, my husband was like, why don't you just put it all in the closet? I was like, you mean I can take the bibs out of the kitchen and put those in the closet and not have, like, not look at those every day? I don't know why that was so revolutionary, but I think you're right. Sometimes when you can put it all in one place and be like, okay, we're going to deal with this later. You
Mhm.
don't have to deal with all the things right now.
Yeah. And like our baby bin is where I would put things like bibs because I was like, well, whenever I go to get out the baby clothes again, I'll find the bibs. Like they're going to be together because I'm not going to use one of these without the other, probably. And so just being like anything that's that first year of life can kind of live in one place.
Yeah.
And you need that all again in the same season, next time.
Yes.
So,
Well, I mean, I do think there's some wisdom in setting aside the things that your eyes can see, even if I knew that I didn't need to deal with those, my eyes were still seeing them. So I think this physical like removal helps you. Okay, now we're going to focus on this other thing because now that's out of sight, and when I need to deal with it, I can. So that's really
mhm.
good. Hey, so you did this, so shifting it away a little bit from the house, but also what we eat in it. You put together this guide, and I think it's brilliant. I know that we received a ridiculous amount of meals. I mean, we spent 44 days in the NICU and a lot of hospital stays subsequently. That we had a lot of people bringing us meals, and there were some people that totally slayed it. I was like, "You need to write a book," and you ended up like writing something, which is it's a free guide. It's amazing. Maybe Kate share a little bit about what's in that because I think sometimes we are the receivers of the meals, but now that I'm in a season where I can like pay it forward, I'm now doing what people did for us, and it is
Mhm.
one of my favorite things to do is to nurture families in a season of chaos or hardship because I know that it's helping them right then in that moment, and that's what I so love about what you put together. So maybe tell people a little bit about what it is and what's inside of it.
So I created the Take Them a Meal manual this year, which is the tagline is my favorite. It's something for feeding friends. I can't even remember my own tagline. But I really wanted to create a resource where people could look at a meal, and the beauty of the document is that the submissions were from people that follow Naptime Kitchen, and when they submitted the recipe, they were supposed to write a little something about like, why do you love that recipe, what do you take it with? And so each recipe it's linked, like they're not my recipes, they link to tons of different blogs. So that's like if you click on the link, it's going to take you to your step-by-step recipe, but then under the recipe it's from the person who was either takes that meal all the time or received that meal, and they say why they love it, what they serve with it, just kind of give a little tip on why they think it's a great meal to take to people. So my hope was just I think that so often the thought of taking some a meal can be really paralyzing. Like,
Yes.
I don't know what to take. I don't know what I would take with it. And the document does start off with our take them a meal mantras, which are like you don't actually have to take someone a meal. That the whole purpose in taking someone a meal is just a way to show that you like love them and are thinking about them. And you
Right.
can also do that through store-bought muffins and a coffee. Like people eat a day, you can drop off snacks for their children and they're going to feel loved by that. That they don't
Yes.
everything does not have to be a casserole. But if you want to take someone a meal, hopefully this document with links to recipes and what people serve with it and why they like to take it could help you do so. And so we got over 200 submissions for it and then made the document. I believe it has 40 total and they're categorized by like cuisine type so that just to give people ideas of what they could take to somebody should they need it. It's been fun for me to
Oh, I
read
bet.
through and get ideas for and stuff.
Well,
So,
what I love is like this why people loved it. Because sometimes you hear a recipe and you're like, oh, but like, why is it that they either loved receiving it or why they
mhm.
love making it and giving it? But I'm glad too that you said that, like, we had a mom who dropped off exactly what you said. She just dropped off. She went to Costco and got like every snack that they had. And for whatever reason, when we were in the hospital, I was like, "Oh, thank God I don't have to figure out the snacks." Like, we
Mhm.
have the bread for the sandwiches, we have the fruit, or I can at least get that. But for whatever reason, the snacks felt overwhelming. And my kids thought that they had hit the lottery because she got things at Costco that I would never get. But I was like,
Yeah.
we are in a season of survival, people. And
Yeah.
so it was such a lifeline. And I occasionally, when we will take a meal, I'll always throw snacks in for the kids because I'm like, really, that's what they're going to remember is the fact that I gave them gummy bears.
Yeah.
And everyone's happy. So thank you for reminding us that it doesn't always have to be extra, right?
Yeah.
Just whatever it is that you're good at. If you're really good at knowing people's coffee orders, then by golly, get your butt to the coffee store and take
I
them some
know.
coffee. It's such a gift.
Sometimes a 10 a.m. coffee drop off is like just what somebody needs. And so
Right.
I think just really wanting to remove barriers that people like insecurities or like they can't do it or they're not good enough. And I have taken plenty of store-bought meals to people. Like we've had times where I'm like, somebody needs something, I'm just gonna run to the bakery and pick up a quiche and take it over. But at the end of the day, it's really all it is just trying to show someone that you care. I would think especially in the NICU, you still have to eat. Like everybody still has to eat. You still have
Yes.
to eat. Your kid, if you have other kids at home, they still have to eat. So just anything that somebody can do to help that particular burden that does not stop, I think this is just a helpful resource for it. And it's free. It's like
I
completely
I
free
love that.
on our website. So
Yeah, we'll make sure we'll link to it in the show notes.
yeah,
People are so needy. They have to eat at least 3 times a
I
day.
know.
So at least let's provide that. My kids, every day, I'm like, we have to eat again? Okay, I guess I gotta figure this out."
I know.
I know we've talked a lot about meals and making our homes work for them. Kate, what's your I guess your parting advice? This always asks some good wisdom at the end. Like, what's your parting advice for a family that finds themselves in chaos and wants to make it better? What would your encouragement be to them in this season of like, I am living absolute chaos and I need to find some control? What would you say to them?
Yeah. Well, I think for your particular audience, it feels a little bit tender because I can only imagine that you're living chaos on two fronts. Like you have a home
Yeah.
life, but if you have a child in the NICU, you have a second home that is at the NICU. And so I, I think for that, speaking to the person who is currently has a child in the NICU, I would feel like all bets are really off in terms of the standards that you feel like you have to have for your home because you're so divided. You're so
Yeah.
deeply divided in even being there. And so just I think I think believing that it is a season, whether that's like, "Oh my gosh, my floors are so gross," believing that that is a season forever and it is no reflection on what you're able to do or what kind of mom you are because you're in a situation that majority of people would never wanna be in. It's a hard, hard situation. And I think if budget allows, anything that you can take off your plate, whether that's like once a month, someone is coming and they're cleaning your toilets and that kind of thing to just allow that off of your plate, I would I would do it. I would have 0 apologies, anything in the way your home is reflected because you have a massive, massive thing going on in your second home, which is a hospital. Like that's
Yeah.
just a really hard situation to be in, I would say. And I think for everybody else, like whether your child is now out of the NICU and you're home, the most helpful thing for me has been to really just be okay with whatever season of life I'm in and allowing my home to reflect that season of life. Really quick story. We bought a new coffee table and it was not cheap. And within 2 weeks, I looked at Nate and I was like, "Hey, I know I bought this nice coffee table. It was a bad decision. It is too nice for our phase of life. It gets like nicks, it like chips, and it's heavy. And so you can't easily move it in order to like put a bunch of pillows on the floor and watch a movie. And those are things I'm like, we have 4 young children. I do not want to babysit a coffee table. And they're not even being that rough on it. It's a delicate coffee table. It was a bad choice. And I want to be able to move the coffee table to have. And I just could feel I am having to like protect this coffee table. I am having to serve this stinking coffee table versus that coffee table is supposed to serve me. This was not a good choice for a coffee table. It also has sharp edges, which
Oh,
with a
that's an
two-year-old,
ER visit waiting to happen.
it was just a bad choice, Kathryn. But the coffee table was such a because for so long I feel like I had been making choices off of like what's best for our family, what's gonna, serve us, that it was such a stark realization of like, I am having to put way too much effort into this coffee table. And so I guess asking like, what is the proverbial like that you feel like you're constantly having to babysit or work yourself around, and how can you change that to better serve your family? Because that is what your home is supposed to do. And so, sorry, one other piece, I'm going long, but
No, I love
the
this.
the realization, I feel like I've said this already, or you mentioned it, but like the realization that my home was a tool that was meant to be used was really, really huge for me. Just, I think about tools and I think about like hammers and saws, like they get dirty, your knives need to be sharpened, like they go through the ringer, and realizing that at the end of the day, if my home looks like, wow, it has been worn out today, that's actually what it is supposed to do. My couch is supposed to be sat on. The pillows are supposed to be rumpled up on it. Like the beds are supposed to become unmade because we sleep in them. And so this myth of pristine, untouched spaces actually does not make sense for what I want my home to do. And so I don't need to put myself to a standard of a home that's not lived in.
I think this is where you drop the microphone if you have one, Kate. I mean, I'm looking around at my house and I was like, well, it does look worn out because we have lived hard in it this week
Yeah.
and really this whole month. And I think that thank you for reminding us that that's what our homes are supposed to do. And for so many great resources that you provide for people that they can get online, but also just for the content that you produce, Kate, I think it is applicable and real. And I think it comes from a real life family who's trying to raise their children, but also encouraging other people that all of it is attainable. You just have to figure out what works for your family. So thanks for reminding us that our families are good just as they are. Oh my gosh. I loved having Kate on the podcast, especially as our very first kickoff guest for tending the heart, the body, and the home this season. Man, sometimes I never know what people are going to say. I sometimes know a little bit about their life story or I know them personally. And so I know when I ask a certain question, I'm excited about what their response will be because maybe I kind of have a sense of maybe what they'll say or just the overarching theme of like, oh yeah, people need to hear that. And then sometimes I'm surprised. I ask a question and they share something and it is exactly what I needed to hear, which also turns out to maybe what you need to hear too. But when I asked Kate the question about what the lesson was that she took from her mom, like what was the greatest lesson that she's took from her, I was really struck by her answer, focusing on this, who are you, not how can you parent perfectly. This I think this desire that we have sometimes as parents is to always be thinking ahead. How can I mitigate this hard thing? How can I help my kids through this hard season? Forgetting that sometimes how we help them build resiliency is by becoming who we were meant to be, right? Being at peace with who we are, delving into things that help make us a better human. And inevitably, our kids pick up on that and they too become better humans because they learn how to be at peace with who they are. And I absolutely love that advice that has so little to do with how you manage chaos in your home, but maybe it doesn't. Maybe that's a mindset that we all needed to start off with. So I'm so glad that I asked Kate that question. I'm also here to say that while her audio course is amazing, it's on sale the month of June. She's doing something for current NICU parents. So if you are a current NICU parent and you feel like you need a life preserver, but you're like, Kathryn, I don't know if I can afford the course, or that just feels like too much, like I'm just trying to do too much and I just can't do it. Kate is offering this to all of you. So if you are a current NICU parent, please email her. And the email is home reset. That's all one word, home reset at naptimekitchen.com. Let her know what NICU you're in and how old your baby is, and she will send you the course for free. I thought that was incredibly generous of her. Please know too that her Make a Meal little guide that she gave is absolutely free. You can log on her website, or you can click the link in the show notes and get access to that. There are some great recipes in there, which I love. But I hope that what you took from my time with Kate is, it's absolutely what I took from it, is that our houses should be worn out. I love that she said that our houses should be worn out at the end of the day because they are serving our family. So if you are in a season of massive chaos, it is okay and perfectly acceptable, and absolutely should. Your house should look like that. And you aren't failing as a human. You are not failing as a parent. In fact, you are being obedient to serving your children and the medical needs that they may have, and the house will come, right? All those things will take care of themselves. So hopefully the tools that Kate gave you will help. But I hope what you took most was her perspective, this practicality, this joyful attitude towards the place where we live can serve us instead of us serving our table. In other words, get rid of that coffee table, y'all. Don't let the coffee table be the boss of you. I love that she shared that. I hope that you take a chance. If you love today's episode, I hope that you rate us over on Apple Podcasts or over on Spotify. Certainly watch us over on YouTube. That's a fun way to do it. And share it. That's my favorite thing, is when you pass along a podcast episode that you love and share it with someone else. But don't go anywhere, because next time we'll be chatting about this.
My advice is that it's just crap, and it's gonna suck. And I don't have a lot to say, because you have to go through it. You just have to keep going, because there's no other choice. And, when somebody tells you, oh, you're so strong, and it's okay to be mad at that too, because you didn't have another choice. What were you supposed to do?